Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining the SCC TOUGHBOOK webinar this morning. We are planning to be running this event for about 45 minutes. Just a little bit of caretaking, a bit of housekeeping. If we could ask you to put any questions that you have during the webinar in the chat. We will then regroup at the end of the webinar and make sure that we cover off any of those questions. And we'll also have an AOB and a call to action at the end where we will turn cameras and mics on, let you guys join the call and ask any other questions that you feel haven't been answered during the course of the webinar. So my name's Chris Jump. Just want to thank you for joining the webinar today. You're going to be hearing from Will Holmes from TOUGHBOOK and Dan Grew from Dorset and Wiltshire. We're going to be talking about the future fit of the MDT and the demountable solutions. So by all means, like I said, if you have any questions, please stick them in the chat, and we very much hope you enjoy the next 45 minutes or so of content and collaboration. Next slide, please. So just by way of intro, my name's Chris Jump, Head of Emergency Services here at SCC. Always been in public sector. This financial year have taken up the role of emergency services, where we've collaborated and joined police, fire and rescue and ambulance into one team. We work extremely closely with TOUGHBOOK in a lot of our emergency services work that we do, and Dan is one of the TOUGHBOOK customers. If I could just ask the guys to quickly introduce themselves, that would be great. We'll start with you, Will.
My name is Will Holmes. I've been looking after the emergency service business, predominantly fire and ambulance, for TOUGHBOOK for the last 9 years. Prior to that, my specialism within the rugged market was in vehicle mounting, which has always been pretty useful in the emergency service market for TOUGHBOOK. So I've got a lot of experience with that, but appreciate SCC pulling this together today, and appreciate Dan Grew for offering to join us to talk about his experiences with the equipment and how they use it. So if I can hand over to Dan to intro himself.
Hi everyone. Daniel Grew, Operational Communication Technology Manager for Dorset and Wiltshire. I've worked in the fire service for 17 years now, and the past 9 of those I've been looking after kind of operational technology in appliances, in officers' cars. So that's MDTs, all that gubbins. Thank you for allowing me to talk about what we've been doing and what the future holds for us, and a bit of a reminder that I need to update my LinkedIn profile picture because that is blooming awful. So thank you for that as well.
I think we're all guilty of that, Dan, but yeah, thank you so much, guys. And if I could just ask Katie to move to the next slide. So just to set the scene, I mentioned earlier, always been in public sector. SCC's made a massive investment in the emergency services industry. So why the partnership of TOUGHBOOK and SCC so important for you guys that have joined the call today? So SCC holds the TOUGHBOOK Premier Partner status, and we've been working with TOUGHBOOK for in excess of 10 years. What does that mean in terms of our capability? What does that give us the right to do? Well, we're an authorised supply for the complete TOUGHBOOK range. That includes all of the docking stations, the warranties and all its related accessories. And then how do we do the services wrap? So we have a full range of support and field services, so we can work with fire and rescue services to provide break fix. But that's not just when the asset is stationary. We also have field services that are available to go out to site on call on emergencies if there are any issues with technologies, the dock, etc. However, what I will say, as with most mobile devices, TOUGHBOOK's an extremely reliable device, and we've got customers that have now, had those same devices for 3, 4, 5, 7 years in some instances. So the support services has really come around the ability to mount the solutions on behalf of the fire and rescue services where there are skills gaps or shortages, etc. But we'll come on to some of that at the end of the slides. So if I could then just ask Katie to go on to the next slide, and we'll pass over to Will.
Thanks, Chris. Fire and rescue service as a market for us is hugely important. I think we've got presence in every UK fire service in one form or the other over the last 10 years. Predominantly, a lot of the work that we do has been legacy with MDTs, which I guess most people are familiar with, for the mobilisation of the fire crews and the information that's held within that. And yeah, I think the CF33 is the most commonplace product in that market as an MDT. Having that 12-inch screen has been, a really fundamental requirement, and also the access to features like GPS, antenna pass through. I think in every instance that's taken within the fire community, and we've seen those devices typically stay in the field between 5 and 7 years with each service, and generally we only see a refresh come round when Windows etc. forces that. So that's, like I said, it's been a real big business core for us, and I think we see as a business around about 5,000 MDT devices fitted across the whole of the UK within fire services now. So it's, like I say, hugely important. Fire is a hugely important customer to us. But where we're seeing a bit more of an uptake and newer technology trends is with the demounted product, as we might call it, which is typically a secondary device that would be fitted into the rear of the vehicle, where the crews have got easier access to information rather than it being the officer in charge, which is typically who would access the MDT. So obviously we offer quite a range of devices, from tablet to detachable to clamshell products. Where we see the probably biggest focus within emergency service community as a whole really is in air tablet or detachable devices, and along the fully rugged kind of range. So that would typically be, as we've said, the CF33 or a 10-inch tablet, which is the G2. And those devices, as a demounted option, I think a lot has come for the requirement from that after the publication of the NOG guidelines. After National Operational Guidance was brought together and revamped, I think it was 3 years ago, there was a lot more focus on information sharing and access to real-time information actually at an incident. And whereas the MDT can provide a lot of that, having a secondary device that's got another form of communications link, typically over a normal 4G network, gives crews that ability to access different applications to what they typically use in an MDT environment. So, like I said, that's where we've seen some extra growth in that market, and I think number-wise, we've probably got about 1.5, nearly 2,000 devices going into the fire community now that are operating as that secondary function role, and that's where we see kind of the application growth as well. So there's a couple of core companies that provide MDT solutions. But with a secondary device, because it's not quite so locked down, typically not connected via a Tetra network or as secure a network, it gives the ability to allow more open source applications to be available. And I think that's becoming more and more of a thing of the future. I think fire crews are used to having technology in their personal lives in their hands now, and they expect the same in their work life. And I think there's some examples from some major incidents that have gone on over the last 5 years where it's stated by crews that they can almost get real-time information via social media quicker than what they're actually getting it through the actual organization. And the organizations are doing a hell of a lot at the moment, I know, to make sure that refined information comes in to the organization to give crews that real-time information. And we're here to provide devices that have got great connectivity, good form factors that are useful for a range of applications within that environment, so that we can bring on those software applications and tools to those crews. I guess it's probably best now if we move on to the next slide and bring Dan into the kind of arena, because it's great me talking about how amazing ToughBook are. We do make great products. They do last a long time. But how a customer really evolves the technology and uses our technology is way more important than me talking about how amazing ToughBook is. So I think if we want to go on to the next slide and bring Dan in a little bit more on that'd be useful. So Dan, your setup in your vehicles, obviously you've been using our kit now for I think about 8 years.
Yeah, in terms of our high level setup configuration. So yeah, 8 years ago we transitioned from the Motorola MDT 1A and VDU. Currently, well, back then we had one installed in every frontline appliance in Dorset and Wiltshire. And when we merged, we did a project to replace them. We went out to operational crews. We gave the owners who went onto the crews. We asked them what they wanted. We gave them options of all the different bits of hardware, how it can be set up in the cab, in the front, in the back, demountable, non-demountable, what applications, what software they wanted. And it was unanimous at the end. The Panasonic ToughBook 33 that had only just come on the market at that time was the preferred option. But what we also found was that there was a lot of familiarity. Firefighters don't like change. Why would they? They've got their job to do. They don't want to be messing around with technology. So transitioning from a 12-inch touchscreen device in the front, they wanted a 12-inch touchscreen device in the front and a demountable in the back. So we did that. We got the Mark 1 CF33s, and it was 7 years of the hardware being perfectly fine, but the software and the training being a bit of a headache, and it hasn't been easy. The biggest challenge has been getting the crews to adopt all these different changes. And I think for us, the biggest thing was the device in the back, utilizing that to its full potential. One in the front, in front of the OIC, like I said, we're going from a touchscreen device doing certain functionality to a touchscreen device doing that functionality, but on a brighter screen with better touch and slightly faster. And so currently we have transitioned from the Mark 1 ToughBook 33 and into the Mark 4 ToughBook 33s. Our configuration is still that we have the MDT in front of the OIC, fixed in, locked into the cab, connected to Airwave as the primary bearer. And in the back, we have the exact same device, but it is built on a different image, and it's connected to a mobile data bearer, and it is demountable. With the device in the front, it's built into a kiosk mode. The crew cannot break out of that, and that's for our coded connection agreement with the government. And the device in the back is a lot more relaxed, so we can have a browser on there. We can have multiple people logging in to Office 365 and play about with what's possible on that device.
It's worth saying at that point, even though it's a bit more relaxed, though, Dan, I think you've had to do a lot of work to make it usable to the crews, haven't you? Because obviously information security is a really big part, and the second that you get a device that can be taken and left off an appliance, there's a lot of questions that get asked about that. And I think originally you were being asked to put like 4 kind of password layers in on from a security level to protect those devices, but then did some work with 2-factor authentication applications to make it so that it was a lot easier for crews to be able to access the equipment, because you were finding that people just wasn't using the kit, was they?
No, it definitely was a challenge. The security side of it is always a challenge, and we're always going to be up against it in terms of what national security is, what our ICT department require, what our crews want, and what's viable in terms of technology. What we do have, yes, is the RFID log on, so crews are able to use their ID cards to get in. We do have BitLocker, we do have Windows passwords, we do have absolute control to monitor and track these devices and be able to remotely zap them. We have Panasonic Smart Services that will allow us to audit them, track the whereabouts and see if they're being used, if they're offline. And all of this is then fed into our ICT risk assessment and then fed back into the wider business as a risk assessment and say, look, if we now reduce those passwords, if we now utilize this bit of software, can we relax the security and make it quicker for the crews to be able to get in? I think if we can move to the next slide, I think goes into a bit more about the differences between the two.
Yeah.
I think the picture on the left is the MDT. I think we're pretty embedded into that now. The demountable is probably the key one for us. What we're also rolling out is the keyboards. We're actually putting the Panasonic CF3 keyboard base into every frontline cab, so the crews can actually pick it up and convert the device into a laptop, and that allows them to use it in a more familiar setting, allows them to complete forms and big pieces of text more. I think. Go on.
Sorry, Dan. I think when the MDTs first rolled out, some fire services like yourselves were replacing the FireLink hardware that had been previously rolled out, but some services didn't have MDTs or were still on the uptake. And for a long time, paper was still on the cabs, the paper options for a lot of the forms and stuff. And something that we've seen certainly over the last 10 years is that paper's slowly going, the forms are getting digitized and getting put onto either the MDT or the demounted product. And much as we always typically see the CF33 go out there as a tablet, it is a detachable product. And the beauty of it is if after a couple of years your application state grows and you need to add a keyboard, like Dorset they've looked at the applications, didn't make that outlay up front, but have later on been able to see the justification for the need for a keyboard and are able to add it. And I think one of the core things with the TOUGHBOOK range is the interchangeability with a lot of the stuff. And we're moving to a whole suite of products that gives us the ability to be able to add and remove features as you go through your kind of your device requirement, because in 5 years things change, right? And if you're investing in a rugged piece of hardware, you want it to last 5 years, but your requirements as an organization may change in that time, and we're trying to give configurable devices, the user configurable devices that enable you to do that.
That's it's also a good example of that shoulder harness that you can see just on that demountable there. So that was a request from several crews. They wanted a way to carry we call them RIT, risk information tablets, and I'll probably get on to why we call them that in a bit. But they wanted a way to carry it to the incident ground and then drop it and have it on the person. So we looked at all these different shoulder harness solutions, and I was a bit skeptical at first, because it's all well and good having a shoulder harness, but storing it and docking it would be a bit complicated. We rolled it out. We did an audit a year later, and 90% of them were removed, and the crews don't use them. But we have the ability to attach them, and the crews can use them. And that just shows that you can listen to your crews, you can give them exactly what they want, but it's not always going to work in your favor. And since then, we've removed the shoulder harnesses, and as Will said, we're going to the attachable keyboard base. So another thing we did kind of put our foot down with is having a device permanently in the vehicle. So that MDT is fixed into that cab, it is connected to Airwave, and we made a decision that would never be demountable. So I know some fire and rescue services are looking at having the MDT as a demountable, but we fundamentally said we were never going to leave a vehicle without a data connection, without a data device. So that's why our MDT in the front is our assured communication back with control via airwave or ESN, as and when that comes to fruition, where the device in the back is the secondary, but has that array of extra applications that we can talk about a little bit more a little later, and all the other apps that we can use. I don't know if it's worth going to the next slide.
Yeah, so from what we see is much as like what Dorset and Wiltshire did, they chose the 33 for the front and the back. For the familiarity piece was a big part of that. Obviously, training is a huge part of when you roll anything out on these projects. I mean, it's so easy to get focused on the hardware, the software on it, the fitting it into the vehicle. But probably one of the biggest parts is training, and you know, Dan will touch on that a little bit. But it's from what we want to be able to do is not force a service to say this is what everyone's doing, this is what you should have. What we've got is a range of devices that we will always loan you up front for you to be able to go and play with, because actually some services prefer the 10-inch product in the back. They accept that there's some slight differences with the product from a training perspective, but they prefer to have the agility of a slightly smaller tablet. Depending on the application set that people are running and the way that that's configured, we typically find that the larger display is more liked because of the type of applications that fire crews are looking at. Having you know, access to that bigger screen, if you're looking at schematics or if you're looking at maps or plans, then a big screen's always going to be preferred by crews typically. But then, you know, some of the applications that have been optimized for a smaller device, some of the vehicle crash data software, etc., seems as good on a 12-inch as it does on a 10-inch screen. And with pinch to zoom functionality and things like that within that software, then a 10-inch device, it can perform as well, and obviously gives you that little bit of like I say, agility. It's not so bulky to carry around the fire ground or instant ground. So from our perspective, it's not about forcing anyone's hand. You know, there's some options. Try them, play with them in the field, try your applications on them, and then you know we'll try and help to come up with the best solution for you off the back of that.
In terms of what we've done in Dorset and Wiltshire, so we initially rolled out the Mark 1 CF33s with Harvest docking stations. We utilised those for 7 years and have now replaced the Mark 1 with the Mark 4, but kept the docking stations. The docking stations are still good, they're still working. We've got low failure rates on those. So in terms of a project refresh, it was relatively simple to re-image these devices, take out the old one, put in a new. There was no downtime for the operational vehicle. And that familiarity comes in with the crews. You know, to them, all they can see difference-wise, apart from the performance from a Mark 1 to a Mark 4, is the device has now got a mono brow at the top of it, and the stickers are in a different place. So for them, again, things haven't changed apart from the little bits in the background that have. We've also unified our product code, so we're or our device, so we're not having a different device in the front as in the back, because we've unified the pass-throughs, so we can reduce how much stock we have to take, because the device that goes as an MDT is in essence the same device that's also a RIT or a demountable. It's just the base image that's changed. So again, we get familiarity and we keep less stock from that point of view. And the familiarity also comes into play for our incident command vehicles or command support vehicles as well. We recently adopted 3 command support vehicles, and all 3 of them have 3 CF33s in them. The exact same hardware as every cab, the exact same software that's on every other cab. And again, that means that they're interchangeable. If for any reason that a demountable runs out of battery, we've got backup hot swappable batteries in the command support unit. If the command support unit, one of the devices breaks or runs out of battery, or there's some issue with it, you can go and grab one of another vehicle that's on the same incident and log it in with the call sign that you need and use that as well. So we're reducing the amount of pressure on the crews by keeping the software the same, the hardware the same, and only changing the configurations to suit their requirements.
Yeah. And I think there's a number of services looking at doing a very similar thing. It's obviously from a training and familiarity piece is probably the biggest driver there, if anything, as well as not having to deinstall, reinstall equipment. And I think the main changes on the CF33 between the Mark 1 and 2, other than internal kind of CPU capability, has been we've added in the u-blox dedicated GPS module. There was a lot of feedback on the Mark 1s and 2s that the GPS would take a while to fix, while after appliances had left pump bays. And actually, the constellation access that you actually had with that on modem GPS that we used to use was quite limited. Whereas now using the u-blox module, it's a lot more configurable, be it you have to put a bit of work into that. But it does open up a hell of a lot more constellation services and Windows location services with the Airbus and Motorola software. Is making faster fix, better accuracy, etc. So I think that you found that as a positive move, haven't you, Dan? It's just a bit of work massively to get it set up.
I think for me, I'm getting old and grumpy now. I've lost the logic of the way that a comms port works. You know, you stick something in a cab, you know, that comms port and that antenna goes up to the sky and sees some satellite and it comes down. There's a bit of logic in that for me. Windows location services is gone from logical to magical. It just kind of works, and I'm not 100% sure how it works, and I'm too tired to try and figure it out for myself. But what we found fundamentally for the crews is that GPS location works quicker, it is stronger, and as soon as we take it out the cab, it's still connected back up again. I mean, I've had to do a bit of work about trying to ascertain how we prove the signal strength is better, and it's took me these two circles will probably help on the screen. Whereas I used to be able to connect in an application and see how many satellites I'm connected to and go, yeah, that's mystical and magical. Now it's the ever decreasing circle that shows you how accurate your GPS is. So I actually utilize what free words as a browser. You can click on, click your location, and it can see your accuracy down to how many meters. And I might be teaching people to suck eggs here, but that was news to me, going from how many satellites I was connected to how accurate my GPS is per meters. And that's one of the things that the Windows location services and the u-blox sensor has done. Is it means GPS just works. We get a hell of a lot less complaints from the crews about tracking and GPS, and it evidently makes my admin life easier.
Yeah, I think as well. I mean, we do a lot of work outside of fire service with that product and that module, and I've done some recent testing with it, and it's advertised as sub 2 meter accuracy, but we're actually seeing in the field when it's out of a vehicle and in somebody's hands in open sight, sub 1 meter accuracy with that module, which it's fairly impressive. I know the fire service doesn't necessarily need that level of accuracy, but it certainly shows a huge improvement from what we had before. Could we move on to the next slide now, I think? Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about this, but these are some of the kind of applications that we would typically see used on air hardware. I think, like I say, a lot of services are fully aware of MDT requirements, MDT applications, and the way that the mobile data terminal will be set up. But I think if you actually looked at if you could have a secondary device on a vehicle, and what you could do with that when you can actually take it away from the vehicle, gives you far more access to different applications. And these are just some of them. I know Dan's talked about a few. And we do see some services say, well, we want to do home fire safety survey, in home fire risk assessments, etc. And arguably, you could use an enterprise level product to do that, consumer grade device. But then when you start thinking, well, if I could run vehicle crash data on this, and could put incident command software on this, all of a sudden, if you invest in rugged, it means you can basically do everything. Whereas if you were to invest in a consumer grade product, you're only going to be able to do a very small part of what those crews do. So it's what you think on day one you can do with the product to what you think you could be doing with it in the next 3, 4, 5 years. It just gives you that scope. So I think that's something you guys have certainly found, and I think at one point your application set grew exponentially, and you've had to actually bring it back down to planet Earth a little bit, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, the amount of stuff that we can now do on our demountable is pretty crazy. I think from a fire and rescue point of view, going out and purchasing a CF33 and putting it in the back of every fire appliance is going to be one heck of a business case, one heck of a project. And I don't know if every fire and rescue service is the same, but usually these projects are spawned from a single idea. So it could be that fire safety department needed a tablet for the crews to be able to complete the job. Usually it's from recommendations from major incidents. So we had the awful Grenfell disaster, and from that we're now looking into fire survival guidance. And it may well be that somebody's been tasked with finding out a suitable device for that. But it's when you start looking at what this device could encompass and how many different departments it could touch upon that your business case, your project becomes massive. It doesn't. If you're only looking for one device that can do FSG, you can buy a cheap device from anywhere. But if you're looking for a device that can do your fire safety, that can do your operational stuff, that can do your incident command, that can do your admin tasks and all of that, you end up increasing that scope massively. And when we initially did our scoping for that device in the back, what its primary function was risk information. That's why it's called a risk information tablet. And that name is no longer valid because we've done so much more. But in the same way that as a mobile data terminal is kind of old a name, we've got mobile data terminals in our pockets if you think about it. So in terms of what we can do on our demountable, the primary software is exactly the same on the front and the back. We've got the front on the MDT with SC response in kiosk, SC response from Airbus. On the back, we've got SC response from Airbus as well. What we do is we utilize the tools module in SC response to link out of that software. So we start going into a lot of browser-based things. So we can go into forms, we can go into internal intranet, we can go onto our risk portal. And that tools menu is kind of endless, and I do have to rein it in. I'll often have somebody come to me and say, well, can you put a link to this? What did I have recently? I had someone ask if I can put a link to a PDF for a particular plane that is at one airport, MOD airport in Wiltshire, and if this plane crashed, we need to refer to this PDF that's online to try and put the fire out. And I had to go back to him and say, well, we're obviously not doing that. That's only relevant to one station and one incident. It might never happen. And I pointed him in the right direction. But what we can also do on the demountable is we've got that vehicle crash data. So everybody does crash recovery. And because it's demountable, we can access the rescue sheets. We can access the schematics on the device right next to the vehicle. We can take a picture of the registration plate and bring up the schematics via that. And that's moved away from black and white printouts. We've got the incident command software. So we're incident ground paperwork we can do. We can take pictures and share it with everybody else on the incident ground. We can take the device out and use it in our training environment. So it's got a HDMI port in it that we can plug into the tellies or the projectors in the training rooms, so that you can actually be running training presentations or training on the risk information tablet in your fire stations. The asset audit, so that's the you can link it up, you can Bluetooth to your scanner, you can go around and do your audit for your vehicles in that and see it in live time appear on your asset tracking system. Yeah, it's kind of endless, and I could spend another hour talking about the capabilities of that demountable, and I'm more than happy to have a breakout session with any fire and rescue service that want to talk about what we've done and what we can do.
Yeah, I think like we said, I think the key thing there is if you provide a rugged platform, it really does open up opportunities. And I think from spending a lot of time with different fire services over the years, typically larger services, they'll have multiple teams working on multiple projects, commanding multiple budgets, and sometimes one side isn't necessarily aware of the other, looking at like an investment to a tablet to do home fire safety checks. And as Dan said at the beginning, if there's a way of bringing that together, that those pots of money together where you can invest in one product that does it all, then that's how a lot of other services have like moved forward with the rugged platform. I think if you were just using the money that you've been given for the home fire safety checks or the fire safety and prevention, you probably wouldn't have enough of an asset funding to be able to get rugged. But then if you go out wider in the organization and look at how you want to use technology to move forward and bring in multiple areas worth of investment, then that gives you the one product can do it kind of all pot of money. And then that gives you bigger savings over time because you're not managing multiple devices. You're not having to refresh them every 2 to 3 years because they're not, they've come to the end of their life. So yeah, I think it's trying to make organizations aware that, I know it's not always easy commercially, but to talk around their IT requirements and like make one investment that's going to last for the future, but then be adaptable and allow you to grow your application set. If we move on to the next slide.
That's been a question in the chat about what we want to do with the demountable in 5 years. I think a lot of what I'll be doing now in terms of now we've rolled out the Mark IVs is kind of embedding the current functionality and fine tuning what we can do. The comms element is probably the key thing. So assurance of communications between these devices and back to our control room. Messaging, video calls, relaying videos from drones, all of that is a nice to have, but the key thing is embedding what we've currently got, making sure every element is utilized to its full potential, and fine tuning what the device can do is kind of, I'm in a state of we've got these devices out there, we've got all of this kit, let's just make sure it's being used.
Yeah, and I think from our perspective, it's trying to maintain that form factor. So with the investment, the training, the growth that teams like Dan's team, what they've done as an organisation, doesn't get lost because we end up life a form factor of a product and then create a lot of headache. So, I mean, as an organisation, we've got some exciting product launches coming this year that I sadly can't talk about on here yet, but the good news is we're still protecting what many fire services have invested in and improving on that. So the new product set that's coming, it's quite exciting, but it's certainly not going to hamper any of the investments that services have made. The CF33 Mark IV still going to be around for at least another 12 months as a product. So any of the services who are investing in that currently, that particular product is still going to be available for a long time. And the same with the G2. We've got some exciting stuff with that as a product coming this year. But again, anyone who's invested in vehicle hardware, vehicle docking, power supplies, antennas, that kind of stuff, the new products are going to be respectful of the legacy in vehicle equipment. So, yeah, we're always very mindful of that as an organisation. But yeah, I think we're getting to the end of the allotted time now. I think really appreciate Dan giving his insights on how they've used the TOUGHBOOK equipment over the years, and his offer to speak to other services if they need any kind of lessons learned from him, because it's great that the fire community do share information. It's probably, out of all my customer sets, they're the one community that generally do want to offer their time and support in that area. But I'm not sure what the questions were. I know that Dan's just answered one there, but was there any other questions on the chat?
Yeah, and I think we've just got one summary slide just to kind of wrap all that up. Well, if that's Katie, if you could just go to the next slide. So just on behalf of everyone, so thanks, Will, thanks, Dan, for such a great 45 minutes. I've made some notes, really. So, engage the fire crew is always important when you're looking at embracing and adopting new technologies. Training and adoption, Dan, I picked up as one of the key areas to ensure that the fire crew kind of then use the technology to the investment that you've made. And Will, you've gone back to say that, if you just look at the cost of the asset, you've got to look at the overall cost of the deployment, the training, the adoption, and then the ROI thereafter. Standardization, recognizing previous investments that have been made. So as TOUGHBOOK and Panasonic bring out new devices, you respect the investments that have been made from a standardization of docking. Secure and positive user experiences, really important. And, making some changes with these demountable assets is kind of potentially, possibly ahead of any changes in sector policies. And look, what does SCC offer? You've got customer experiences that have been demonstrated here. You've got a solid, robust portfolio that respects heritage and previous investments. What SCC offers is a compliant route to market. We have partnerships with TOUGHBOOK, Cradlepoint, Ericsson, all are complementary as well. But don't let funding or lack of funding stop you from making these investments. The partnership that we've got with TOUGHBOOK, we can help fund proof of concepts, proof of values that will enable you to draw up ROI and business cases for investments internally. Also, if you've got funding but you don't have the skills, or that you've got gaps in resources, don't let that again hold up any innovation or transformation. SCC has access to lots of resources that are experienced with the right level of security clearances, if that's something that we need to be obviously sensitive to. So, we can help with training and adoption. So between ourselves, the customers you have access to ask any questions, TOUGHBOOK as a portfolio and a roadmap, you kind of, as a customer base, have access to all of the resources that you need to help along this journey of this next demountable policy and changes. So I'm going to draw it to a close now. If anyone has any questions, please, stick your hand up, post it in the chat. This webinar will be shared socially as well, so you can then share the output for the webinar with any colleagues, teams or organisations that you think weren't able to make it today for whatever reasons. And I think, on behalf of TOUGHBOOK SCC and Dan at Dorset and Wiltshire, I really appreciate everyone giving us your time.
I appreciate you hosting. Appreciate Dan's time and everyone who's given the time to this. I just wanted to say as well, anyone who's currently looking at hardware, we are in a bit of an unprecedented time with some crazy stuff going on with silicon costs and memory costs at the moment. We as an organisation are doing everything we can to kind of stabilise that. Our partners like SCC are really trying to help with that, taking stock slightly ahead of when people need it, and also the kind of financing packages that both Panasonic and SCC can offer to kind of spread cost and turn a capital expense into an operational expense. We can give you a lot more information on that and work with you as an organisation on that, because I've never seen it where organisations are saying quotes are only valid for 48 hours, and in this sector, it's gone a little bit nuts at the moment, and we predict that it's going to be 12 months of kind of a very unpredictable costings market with prices going up. So we understand public sector organisations are struggling with budgets and stuff at the minute, and we have got tools that can help with that, but it's worth making people aware of that at this stage.
I think that's a really good point, and one that I missed, although I had it written down in my scratchy notes there, is that we're working with TOUGHBOOK with lots of customers at the moment across all emergency services where they know they have budget for next financial year to do innovation and transformation, but they also know that weekly, monthly, hourly, in some instances, prices, going back to what Will's just mentioned there, are going up 10, 15, 20, if not more %. So what we're actually doing in partnership with TOUGHBOOK, if its customers want to do transformation and innovation in financial year 27, April onwards, we will order that kit in for you to lock in a price and availability in stock today. That then means that we can retrospectively invoice you in April onwards. So again, don't let finances stop you from innovation. Don't let finances stop you from transformation and adoption. Work with us, reach out to Will and I. Dan's also offered to speak to any customers that would like to kind of get some further detail around what he's done. So we're here to help. Don't let skills, finance and experience slow you down. So thank you very much for everyone. Thank you for joining, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Yeah, and if there are any questions, I think it's open now if anybody wants to butt in. I know it's always a bit awkward. People don't want to.
Yeah.
But...
We have had a wonderful list of questions coming from Scott McCullough. Don't know if Scott's staying on the line. I can address those, or
Scott, I can see he's left. Yes.
Okay, that's all right. As it was in the Q&A, so I can probably respond to that directly if someone can send me his email.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, everyone.
Cool.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank
All.
you.
Take care now. Bye.
Bye-bye.